last video where we introduced experimentation in business, we actually highlighted the 5 general steps that are taken in business experimentation process. Okay, we talked about 5 general steps, and if you remember correctly, these steps are: number 1, defining the objective and formulating the hypothesis of the experiment. Number 2 was defining the business metric and aligning with business stakeholders. Number 3, I believe, was basically designing and implementing the experiment, and the 4th one was measuring the experiment and reporting the outcome, and finally rolling out whatever outcome based on the experiment data and conclusions. Okay, so those are the 5 general steps. Of course, this can be different from business to business, but if you have not watched this video yet, please take some time and watch that. I'm linking that here for you so you can actually watch and you can follow through in our introductory video. And today I would like to dive deeper into the first step, which is basically defining the objective of the experiment and formulating your hypothesis. Okay, now every experiment actually starts with an idea. Okay, this idea may be driven by some intuition, or by some historical learning, or by some literature that exists somewhere. So for example, let's say currently your marketing offer that has been driving you the most sales is actually 20% off any purchase, and an executive comes and say, I think we can actually increase our sales by giving a better offer but having a higher threshold, so that people who want to take this offer can spend more. So he says something like, let's do 25% off any amount of $100 or more spent. Okay, now this is a different variation of the offer that you already have. So instead of you to just say, yeah, let's do that, you may want to experiment that. So in that case, the objective of the experiment is to really understand the impact of a new marketing offer, okay, which of course you clearly define. Okay, so every experiment must have a very clear objective. So it is important that we clearly discuss with our business stakeholders the objective of the experiment, so that we don't actually just keep doing things and not improving anything. Okay, now, so in that case, you have your objective, but then you need to actually define a hypothesis. So the question is, what do we mean by hypothesis? Okay, basically a hypothesis is just a claim or an explanation, or a prediction about something that could happen when an experiment is done. Okay, so it's really a claim. It's not proven yet. It's a claim. That's what it's called, what? A hypothesis. Okay, now let's go into a little bit of statistics. So in statistics, you will have 2 types of hypothesis: what we call the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis is usually the hypothesis of what? No change. And then the alternative hypothesis is the hypothesis that there will be what? Some change. So in the example that I'm giving, the null hypothesis will be introducing a 25% off $100 spent or more will have the same impact as just running 20% off any purchase. So it's a hypothesis of what? No change. Okay, and then the alternative hypothesis in that case could be introducing a 25% off $100 spent or more will lead to a higher spend amount, okay, compared to just having a 20% off any purchase. Okay, so that's like at a very basic level, an alternative hypothesis, where what is a hypothesis of what? Change. Okay, so in business we mostly deal with the alternative hypothesis than the null hypothesis. Okay, but just so you can understand, when your data person is speaking this language to you, if you are a business stakeholder, or if you are a data person explaining this to a business stakeholder, it's important that we kind of understand this. Okay, so in a nutshell, the null hypothesis is the hypothesis or claim that is being made, okay, which we are trying to disprove in many cases. And then the alternative hypothesis is the hypothesis that we are trying to what? To prove. Okay, so now in formulating hypothesis, we must make sure that certain things are in place. Okay, so let's talk about some of the important things about formulating a very good hypothesis. Okay, number one, a good hypothesis must be specific and clear. Okay, please, this is very important. If you are formulating a hypothesis for an experiment, it must be specific and clear. So what do I mean by that? Let me actually do this by giving an example of a very vague hypothesis. Let's say your stakeholder comes and say, okay, my hypothesis is improving our website could increase our sales. Okay, that sounds good, but it's actually vague, right? What does improving our website mean? And what does increasing our sales mean? Like, how does that actually work? Okay, so that's kind of a very unclear hypothesis. A better way to actually make the hypothesis could be by placing our hero image, or by placing our top seller in the top right of our website. Clicks will increase, which essentially may lead to increase in sales. So like making your hypothesis more clear is very critical in ensuring that you are able to actually experiment your hypothesis very well. So that's number one. Okay, hypothesis must be what? Very clear and not vague. Okay, they must be very clear and specific and not vague. Okay, number two is that a good hypothesis is actually simple. It's not very complicated at all, and it focuses on what? One variable at a time. Okay, so a good hypothesis must be simple. Let me give you an example of a very bad and complicated hypothesis. Okay, let me read this for you. If we modify our user interface and change the pricing model, there might be some effect on user satisfaction or revenue. Look at that. Now, that's a lot of what? Variables there. First, we are talking about what? If we actually modify our user interface, and then what? Pricing model. And then we say this will also improve what? User experience, at the same time, drive revenue. So now that's a very complex hypothesis. You don't want your hypothesis to be as complex as that, because if you do that, you won't be able to actually measure anything, right? So a simple way you could do that is to actually break the hypothesis into multiple hypotheses. Okay, so you have multiple. So one of them could be, by modifying our user experience by X, okay, by doing X to the user experience, we will increase our customer satisfaction. Okay, so simple, right? So always make sure that your hypothesis is actually what? Simple and not complicated. Okay, now the third thing that I'm talking about is that your hypothesis must be testable. It might be something that you can actually test. Let me give you a very bad example. So let's say I come to you and I say, customers will love our new service. Okay, can we test that? Customers will love our new service, if that's the hypothesis. Well, maybe we have to actually go a little deeper. What do we mean by customers will love? Okay, is that based on customer satisfaction? Is that based on increase in active users? So you basically have to think about the hypothesis in a way that it can be testable. So I can restate that hypothesis to mean that by introducing a quick checkout service, our customer satisfaction score will increase. Okay, so that's a little better, right? So basically the idea is that make sure that your hypothesis is what? Testable. Okay, so please keep those three things in mind. So in addition to those three things, every time you are doing any hypothesis formulation, make sure that your stakeholders are in the loop. You are also bringing in your data experts. So if you are a data scientist, make sure that your business stakeholders are in the loop. If you are a business stakeholder, make sure that you are talking with your data folks so that they can help you refine your hypothesis to make sure that it is testable. Okay, One other consideration of a good hypothesis is also to ensure that there is some rationale or some reasoning behind why we are coming up even with that hypothesis, right? This rationale or reasoning could come from our intuition or from some past analysis or from some literature review, right? It's important that there is some rationale behind the hypothesis so that we don't end up like just testing random things for the sake of experimentation and really wasting a lot of time or missing the point, right? So those are all very important considerations in the first step of an experimentation in business, which is hypothesis formulation. Now, let me actually give you some examples of some good hypotheses that I see out there, okay? The first one is this. Email subject lines that include recipient's first name will have higher open rates than those that do not, okay? The rationale behind that is that, of course, we know that personalization in marketing messaging is known to have, capture attention or boost engagement. So that's kind of the rationale behind that hypothesis, right? Another example is students who study in a quiet environment will achieve higher test scores than those who study in a noisy environment. Okay, of course, the rationale there is that quiet environment reduces distractions, allowing better focus and information retention. So that's like some rationale, some intuition behind the hypothesis. Okay, another example is implementing a voice search function on our mobile app will result in a 10% increase or maybe some X% increase in daily active users who frequently search for information. Okay, of course, the idea is that bringing that new functionality will bring some what additional engagement, right? So I think the idea I want to illustrate here is that it's important that good hypotheses have some reasoning or rationale behind that. Okay, finally, make sure that your hypothesis could be going either way. So don't come up with a hypothesis that is only one-sided, that you really only want to prove what you want, like you have a confirmation bias, which some things I have to explain in another video. That is, so your goal is only to actually confirm your bias. So make sure that when you are creating a hypothesis, you are very open for anything to happen. Okay, all right, I hope this is very helpful. This is the first step in running an experimentation in business, and I'm going to do additional videos to explain each of the remaining 4 steps. Thank you. Bye bye.